we got a bunch of people here interested in these things. So I'm going to go ahead and share my slides and we can get going. Let's see. I'm going to do this. I know how to do this.
Yeah, we do have some expensive markets.
All
Santa
right, let's go.
Cruz, Long Island.
Bunch of people. Good stuff. So welcome out, guys. I'm going to be talking a lot. So, but like Brady said, this is interactive. So I could stare at the Q&A. I could stare at the chat. So if you guys have any questions as we go, definitely put them in the Q&A. It's a little bit easier for me to track those on my side, especially for Brady too. He's going to be watching those. And if you guys have a really good question, he'll probably interrupt me and we can stop the show and go into that. Cool? Good, Brady? Let's
Sounds good,
do
man.
it.
Take it away.
All right, Kyle, live in Hawaii. What's up? All right. So we're going to talk about building and scaling real estate, but kind of in a different niche on it, mostly on the flips and BRRRs side of it. You can also encompass this into rentals. BRRRs is, we'll get into that, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. I've been doing this for a long time. It doesn't seem like it for me sometimes, but essentially what I call myself is a recovering house flippers these days. I got started wholesaling real estate, which is tying up properties off market and then selling the contract in 2005. So that was what, 21 years ago, which is crazy. So I dropped out of college when I was 20 years old to basically do real estate and messed up a whole bunch of stuff. Long story short, got out of it in end of 2006, right? And then I got back into it full time in 2011 and have never stopped since 2011. So I'm mostly known for flipping, but in 2018, I decided to throw away the flips and go straight to BRRRR, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. There's a long story there. I'm not going to get into it on this presentation, or else I'd spend half my time talking about why I made that transition, but we'll get into it a little bit. I also own a number of other companies. So I have Fixated Capital, Fixated Funding, and Fixated Events. And Fixated Events was an accidental events business that I just did in Seattle because we were running meetups, and that led to a large conference called the PNW Expo. And then eventually that led to the Limitless Financial Freedom Expo, which I am 50-50 partners with Ken McElroy on, and we host every single year. In addition to that, we also host, which I'll just, spoiler alert, I'll sell you guys on this right now, but we also do the REI Summit, which is coming up April 1st in Austin, Texas. So Brady will be there. Ed from Rent Ready will be there as well. And so we do that once a year. This year it's in Austin again. We did it last year in Austin. It's in Austin again. You get a promo code because you guys are here on this webinar. It's Rent Ready, and you'll get 15% off your ticket. You can go to reisummit2026.com. Check it out. So moving on. So here's me, guys.
Real quick.
Oh, go ahead,
real
Brady.
quick. If y'all could do me a favor, let me know if you see both of us and the slides in the chat. Everything looks normal on my end. You should see everything. I've had 2 people say they can't see slides. Okay, cool.
Cool. Sometimes if you're watching this from your,
mobile,
when you're watching it from
yeah,
your phone, it doesn't always like show it correctly. So you might have to mess around
maybe
with that.
tilt
if you're
your
watching.
phone or hop on a desktop. Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, guys.
So as long as you can hear us and see the slides, that's what matters most. Okay, so here's my story, guys. In 2011, I went full-time active house flipping. That's all I did. I did that from 2011 to 2017. I only flipped. I was addicted to flipping. And really what it wasn't really the flips. It was had to do with the income. So I didn't start real estate because I liked real estate. I started doing real estate because I wanted to make money, right? And I don't know if you guys are like me. If you say like, I started real estate because I love picking out finishes, dealing with realtors, negotiating with contractors. I just love how the house turns out. That's great. That's not why I did it. I did it because I wanted to make money. So I don't know if anybody else can relate to me on that. But I had to get good at dealing with contractors, get good at dealing with realtors, get good at looking at houses and doing all that stuff so I could just make money, right? That's basically what it boiled down to. But I became addicted to basically the faster cash, like when it comes to flips, and not the long-term wealth building. So during that 6-7 year period, I made a lot of income, but I didn't build a lot of wealth. I actually didn't get my first rental until 2016. And you're talking, I probably did close to 500 properties, about 450, 500 by the time that happened. I worked in the REO, I was big time in the REO field, which is the real estate owned foreclosure time period, which is like the wild, wild west between 2010 and 2016, right? Basically, it was just crazy. And that's pretty much how I got, into the business. And everybody I talked to, I met back then, most of the people in the industry were flipping, they weren't keeping. And a lot of that had to do with financing. Like, it was just hard to get funding. So just keep that in mind as the markets change in the world. Like when deals are everywhere, funding is hard to get. And when funding is everywhere, deals are hard to get. That's typically what happens. So, and back then, trust me, these houses here, I had no idea they were quote great deals. Like they're just crappy houses that like had slim margins back then. And it was actually very normal during this time period that I would list a house. I wouldn't list it, but a realtor would list it for me. And I'd be like, it's going to sit on the market for like 90 to 180 days before we get a offer on it. That was like normal for us to like think back then with doing concessions. It just was just normal. So we just knew that. And we are like, if we can make 10, 15, 20, 30 grand on a house, that was great. So that was my life during that time period. And I got addicted to the flips because flipping is supposed to be easier. You're supposed to take a messed up house and turn it into a beautiful house. Believe it or not, that's the same house. And it's so easy, right? But there's a lot of challenges that come with that. And I'm not just going to talk about flips. There's a reason why I'm getting into this. But through flipping houses, I made a lot of mistakes. So we're going to get into some of the systems, some of the processes, and some of the things that I've just created for myself to make my life easier that I'll share with you guys and give you guys access to the resources and all the free stuff that we have for that. But just know as I'm going through like why we handle construction the way they do it, why we take photos the way we take them, why we negotiate the way we do it with construction, rehab, BRRRs, all that great stuff, has a lot to do with all the mistakes I've made. That's what it boils down to. And for some of you guys, I don't know your experience. Some of you guys are newer. Some of you guys are a little bit more experienced. All I can say is that like we can only make so many mistakes before we're out of business. And in my example, on my side, I was just doing so much volume, so I was able to like steamroll through mistakes. But you can have some pretty big ones out there. And there's our people out there right now having some big financial mistakes currently from past deals. That said, you can learn a lot from them. So I'll let you guys also learn from my mistakes. So here's a list of some of my mistakes. These are my top favorite mistakes I've done over the years. The list is never ending. It continues to grow. So here's some things I've learned that's helped me build out some of the processes we have today that I'll go over to. I had a contractor skip town with a $30,000 deposit. So it was a $60,000 rehab and I gave 50% down to the GC. 2 weeks later, nowhere to be seen. The guy's gone. Okay, left town, all that great stuff. Good time. Now,
I know we had 2 questions in advance about people asking about how do you prevent this. So I'm curious. This is going to be good.
Well, I'll give you the spoiler alert on this side. If I'm hiring a general contractor, a GC, no way in heck I'm giving them 50% down. It's just not happening. If I'm hiring a roofer, right, as an example, a roofer has a lot of high upfront material cost. Yeah, it's normal to pay them 50% because they're going to use that to buy material costs. So it's really just setting the stage. And we'll get into that a little bit in this presentation as far as like our expectation of them. And a lot of times, if you're finding the right contractor that work with you, here's the downside with flipping and burning. We can't afford the really, really good professional, well put together contractor usually is what it boils down to, right? We just usually can't. So we're not always dealing with not bad contractors. We're dealing with people that are great at construction, but they might not be good at their business, which is not the same thing. So, and there's a lot of good contractors out there that are they're just not good at doing their business side. They'd rather just work the job, right? Which is the guys I like to hire, right? And then there's guys that are great at their business model and they're just saying, and they got wraps around their trucks. They got billboards everywhere. And like, you can't afford those guys. So don't even call them, right? They're just going to be the most expensive. So that's it. A lot of stories there. Been red tagged. Now a red tag is when you rehab a property without permits and get caught. That's the key word. You got caught doing the rehab without permits. And this was my very first red tag ever with the city of Tacoma. It will forever be remembered. So I've also had in Washington, they have a state agency there called Labor and Industries. So they handle all the workers' comp, they handle all the licensing as well for construction and so forth. And there's this weird rule in Washington that's completely illegal. But nobody's ever gone to the state Supreme Court to challenge it because it's too expensive. But it basically is along the lines that for a long time, they wanted house flippers to be a general contractor, or else you couldn't flip houses. So, and it was really just a money grab for bonds and stuff like that. It was completely outrageous. But that said, I did get the bigger target you get I was a big target in Seattle. So like they audited me for 3 years and it was a good time. Not at all. I've had active flips burned down. Actually, short story on this stuff. there's a reason why we keep lots of paperwork. So I will say that audit, it was a 3-year audit, took 11 months to get through, had an attorney and everything involved in it. The originally L&I thought that actually said that I owed over $100,000 in like fines and fees and workers' comp. By the time we were done, I wrote a check for less than $5,000 to them. And it had to do, and the reason why that was the case was because of what we follow in our rules and systems, which is we have W-9s, we have contracts within contractors, we get their insurance, we get their bond, we get lien releases. These are all pain in the butt things to get, but super important if you ever need them. So we don't hire unlicensed guys. It's very easy to get into the habit of the legal fees were actually pretty low because we didn't have to actually go to court. It was just some phone calls. So I spent just like $3,000 on legal fees. But it was cheap. That's a good question, Daniel. But if we went to court, so actually full disclosure, I'm not going to get into this too much detail, but I didn't even owe the $5,000. It's just my attorney's like, hey, the next step is to go to court, and you're going to spend like 10 grand on me to go to court. So you might as well just pay the $5,000 and move on. I'm like, you're right. Okay, we'll just move on. But I didn't even know that just because we had all the documentation. Moral of the story with this, which I did not mean to get into on this webinar, sorry, Brady, is documentation. Get licenses from your contractors, get bonds, get their insurance, get a workers' comp waiver. All that stuff is just something that we just save and we might not ever need ever, but we have it saved. And it saved me big time having it saved, right? Let's just put it that way.
Provides peace of mind. Yeah.
That's it. And just hire licensed guys, right? How do you write off on your taxes legally if you can't, like, if you're just paying them cash? Like, there's just things like that I'm not a big fan of that you just learn as you do this business. So had active flips burned down. That is not what the house is supposed to look like. So that's midway through the rehab construction, some lovely, what would you call, urban campers came into the house and decided to light it on fire. Good times. Seattle has a lot of water, right? And it's not like a torrential downpour. It's just constantly raining 9 months out of the year. So they have a lot of basements in Seattle. So there's a lot of times what happens for newer investors in Seattle is they buy a property, let's say in like May or June when it's really, really nice. And then by November, when it starts to rain again, the basement gets water in it and they finished the basement. So that's our lesson when you're a newer investor in that area. Notice how this is brand new, beautiful sheetrock in a basement and water came in later, right? This one was a fun one in Washington. This was actually a short sale during the REO time. So we tied this property up for 6 months. It took about 6 months to go through the short sale. And the sump pump, went out because they had no power. And then we bought it, closed on it, went to the house. And I'm like, oh, shoot, the basement's full of water, right? So normal thing. Did you have great insurance on that in progress? Oh, yes. So JD Brown, great question on the firehouse, right? On the house that burnt down. I'm not saying you should have your house burned down, but I am saying that it's a good thing we had insurance, and it ended up being probably the most profitable flip I ever did. So at the end of the day, so what was at first a bad thing turned into like, oh, that wasn't that bad. So I'm not going to get into that on a recorded line, but it was awesome. So lots of contractor mess ups. This is by far my favorite unintentional mess up from a contractor, which was this is a brand new bathroom, put everything in. The tile is in. You guys see that? That's brand new tile, everything. And brand new water, all that stuff. And then the door gets put in and you can't close the door, right? Because the toilet is in the way, right? Good times. I love this photo. I have so many of these photos, guys. I should do a whole webinar just on like
that would be fun.
Yeah. Pictures contractors send me. like that's the title of the webinar. Right? And they're proud of him. Like the guy that sent me this photo, I still remember him. He's like, nailed it. Like, check this out. Now, have you guys ever seen, just quick, Brady, can you pick out on this picture what's wrong with this photo before I point it out to everybody?
Let me see. Something is off with the door. I can't exactly pinpoint it.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of stuff wrong with this.
Oh,
don't worry.
Okay. Right? Your railing is not.
Yeah.
It's not parallel. That's super weird.
Check that out, right? So the railing, it's one of those progressively shorter rails as it goes, right? So a whole bunch of other stuff wrong with it, right? Windows side, this was fine. These are old houses, so I wasn't worried about the windows. That's actually original, but except for the windows themselves, the size of the door. But this was like a brand new deck. And he's just like crushed it. Here's my invoice, and you're like, come on, dude. What did you
think
do?
as you cut each rail progressively, you would go, something's off after the third one when they keep growing in size.
Yeah, right. So it's just some people like drugs. So but Kyle, good question. The contractor, of course, we didn't. Here's the thing: don't pay. Here's a big lesson to everybody. It's trust but verify. Just remember that, right? Like when it comes to construction, for us, I trust my contractors, but we verify, right? And so, no, if this is not done to how it's supposed to be, absolutely it needs to, we're not paying them. The only tool we have to protect ourselves as clients of the contractor is paying, right? As soon as we paid them full price, if we paid the invoice in full already, and then we see this, like, sure, we can go after their bond. Sure, we can do stuff if we really wanted to, but it's a pain. A good contractor is going to come back and fix it, no problem. But we do lose leverage when we do that. So just keep that in mind. So, anyways, uh, I have had project managers because we've done enough volume, right? I didn't do this all by myself, right? So we've had on my side, I've hired project managers. I have plenty of internal staff for different things. There's been periods of time where I've done this with one person, two people, whatever, at a time in my business over the years. But like I've also hired project managers that run the construction. I've had those guys. I've had one guy, not those guys, one guy definitely steal from me. And the way that he did it was that he would. We'd have a budget item for $4,000, let's say for trash out, and he'd get a guy to go out there and bid it for 3,000, and then come back and have the guy invoice us for 4, and then he'd keep the difference. So it'd be skim of the top, right? So good times. I lost 220 on some flips, right? Which that sucks. These are the 3 that I lost. These 2 I lost in the same. No, sorry. These 2 I lost in the 2022 shift when the market shifted in 2022 in Seattle. These 2 were those. This one was my first property I ever lost money on. That was in 2018, and that was in Portland, Oregon. Good times. I could actually add to this now because we lost some money last year in some flips too. So I need to update the slide. Flipping sucks sometimes, just full honesty to you guys, but it's not always for the faint of heart. So I've chased the next flip. I've been addicted, and all those lessons. And trust me, there's a lot more lessons in it. I hope you guys are still excited about real estate by the end of these lessons. Is that there's been more than just the cost of financials, but there's also been all the time, the stress, the opportunities, the freedom, like all those phone calls, all those issues, all those like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? You know, those are real mental stressful moments. Today, I'll be honest, I've been doing this now for a very long time. Today it's just a Monday, and you're just like, all right, well, it's no big deal. You get you grow from it, you learn from it, you get jaded from it, and you get kind of calloused from it. But it's not that we're going to get into construction for sure, but it's not trying to make a plan that everything goes right all the time, because that's impossible. That's never going to happen on a construction project. It's the exception, not the rule, for everything to go right. And so it happens sometimes. It's awesome, right, when that happens. But with construction, something will always go wrong. What needs to change is our process, our mentality towards this stuff, and doing everything we can to protect our downside. So if something does go wrong, we already know what to do next. So it's not freaking us out. It's not causing us, more than anything, it's not costing us time and stress, right? So that's a thing that I think really hurts people in this business long term. So what all this all means for y'all is that real estate's hard. So that's just the reality. I have one of my best friends in the world is really, really good at teaching people how to simplify real estate. He's like, there's only 3 things that you need to be successful in real estate, right? That's not me, right, at all. Like, I'm more like, hey, there's literally 100 things you need to learn, if not more, to be good at real estate. So it's hard. It's just what it is. And so now there are things about it that are easy, but to run it like a real business, to go through all this stuff, there's a lot of things that like hoops to jump through. Now, for those of you guys that bought your first rental or doing your first BRRRR, like 1 at a time is easy. You still go through it, you learn it and stuff, but doing 10 at a time, that's where it starts to become a different game. So that said, despite that, a lot of us, myself included, we got started in real estate by ourselves in some capacity. Maybe we read a book, maybe we watched a podcast, right? Maybe we bought a course, right? And we're usually by ourselves trying to figure out this business as we go. And we just do what we think is right. So maybe like in this example here, this is like somebody's typical system in their business, right? They're buying houses, they're hiring contractors, they're funding, they're getting marketing, maybe there's some change orders, bookkeeping's over here. They just kind of ignore that for a while, right? Especially house flippers. Budgets, and there's no real rhyme or reason to how we do it. We're just doing it. That's a lot of people's businesses, and for a period of time, that's my business as well. And And then one day we hear another podcast or a webinar and we add to what we're doing. Oh, that's a really cool idea. I'm going to do that now, right? Like, and we just continue to like add on or get shiny object syndrome or whatever it is, right? That's the same thing with niches in real estate, right? Maybe you're excited about single family today's short-term rental, but then tomorrow you hear my buddy Jesse who talks about midterm rentals. You're like, oh, maybe I should get into midterms, and we jump over there, right? So it's all over the place. And from my experience, the niches are in the riches. So not only just as far as like picking an asset class, which we're going to get into, but also building out a duplicatable, replicatable process so that way we can scale and grow. Or even if we don't want to scale and grow in real estate, reduce stress, right? That's a big thing, right? Make it so we're more predictable in what we're doing. So we don't have to think about it and reinvent the wheel over and over again. I've been on stage multiple times saying how much I don't like doing real estate, right? I really, there's not a whole lot I like about doing real estate, which is why I spent a lot of time, or have spent a lot of time in the past, creating ways to make it easier for me. And that's what we're going to get into essentially in this presentation. Cool, Brady? Good to go still?
Good, man. I'm
Awesome.
loving it.
All right, so
Jack in the comments says, dude, you're causing me anxiety.
yeah, I know, right? Like, it's crazy. Now it's funny. Like, there's this whole thing, like, like, this is going to be a good story later. Like, when something bad happens, like, we're like, oh, this is going to be a great story later. It sucks right now. This is going to be a good story later.
Yeah.
But there's always something new. I could literally just stay here all day telling you guys stories. But all right. So here's the thing. Question to the chat: more houses equals more money? Yes or no? To make more money. Buy more houses, make more money. Yes or no?
You're talking about monthly cash flow?
I don't know. Whatever it means to you, right?
No.
All right, everybody thinks it's a trick question, right? Yeah. Maybe. It depends is the answer, right?
Everyone's very skeptical now. They're like, ugh.
I don't know. We always look at, yeah. So better systems equals better profits, systems equal freedom. So really it's a matter of, you can buy more houses and make less money. You can lose a lot of money, right? You can buy more houses and make a lot more money, right? It just depends on your systems and processes and everything. So each one of us has a limit to how many we can buy. Each one of us has a limit to, even if you had unlimited funding, which some of us would love, we still have a limit to how many projects we can run. We still have a limit to how many properties we can manage. We still have a limit based on our system that we have, that you have, right, will limit you to where your system breaks. This happens with contractors a lot. So you can see and have a great guy who has him and his brother or whatever, like with the truck, and they're great contractors, and they do one house for you, and it's awesome. But then you all of a sudden you get two houses at a time, and you give them both of those houses, and they do pretty good. But then you give them three houses at a time, and they screw up all three houses, and you just think they're horrible. But the problem is not that they're horrible, is that they couldn't handle three at a time. They could handle two. Their system stopped them at that. So what's that for you? So that's the question for you guys. There's a point where it's not always capital. If you had unlimited capital, at what point does your system, your process break? And that could be property management, that could be construction management, that could be acquisitions, that could be operations, that could be something, but something breaks on your side. And I want you guys to think on that, what that really is. So what's flipping done for me essentially, and this is even though we're talking about rentals too and BRRRs, flipping has got me really good at construction. So this is my very first rental that I ever bought ever, right? So you're talking hundreds of houses later. I never had a rental until 2016. This house, I still own this house to this day, right? Look at that beautiful house. It's in Lakewood, Washington. So that's actually what it looks like now. We actually split the lot and everything. So it's we're building a duplex on the front of it right now. So but I still own this. So I've owned this house for 10 years now. And taking a house that turned into this is what flipping did for me. So it was my first BRRRR. In fact, with the numbers on this property, funny story on it was that we had to come, so we buy the house, we rehab it, right? We get an appraisal, and then the settlement for the appraisal, for the refinance came back, and they said that I owed $6,700 to do the refinance, which means that in order to refinance out of this property, out of the hard money lending that I had on it, I had to come to closing with $6,700. I was so pissed about having to come to close, because to me, I don't know if you guys are following me, but I was doing a refinance to pay off the hard money loan that I had on it to turn it from this into this. And I had to come to close with $6,700. That was the first time I'd ever had to come to close with money, right? And I thought that I was losing money by putting $6,700 a month, $6,700 into the refinance. When this property cash flowed $600 a month after the refi. So you guys are all landlords and stuff. So if you have a property that your down payment and cost is $6,700, but it cash flows $600 a month, is that a good deal? Brady, is that a good deal?
I don't know, man.
It's a screaming deal. You're out of pocket $6,700, but you're cash flowing 600 a month, right?
Yeah.
Insanely good deal. But I
Yeah.
almost canceled the entire transaction because in my head I'm like I'm losing money, right? Because I was so
Because you
stuck
pass
on
an upfront fee. Yeah.
correct, because I was so stuck on flipping, right? That's really what it boils down to. It was ridiculous. My wife and I were talking about it at the time. We were on a hike, and I'm like, "This is stupid. We're losing money." And she basically said I was a complete idiot. So, but this
Yeah.
was the first rental, and that was the biggest eye-opening moment for me. Additionally, when it comes to, I'm not saying that all you guys out there need to learn how to flip. What I'm saying is you got to get good at construction, right? So, because in order to obtain better in the business. So, look at this property here. So, this is a property I bought a while ago. But if we're traditional landlords and we look at this property, would a normal landlord, other than a slumlord, want to buy this house, right? Most of us that are looking to put 20% down on a house, keep cash flow, whatever that kind of thing, we might avoid this house because of the amount of construction that's on it. Can some people list out, Brady, can you pick some of the things that's wrong with this house?
Yeah. We need new roof. Probably. Looks like paint's probably peeling.
Yep, whole bunch of stuff.
Probably new windows. Looks like old single pane windows.
Yep,
Flashing on the chimney.
gutters.
Gutters.
Yep, that's good.
That
A bunch of
little
stuff.
covering over the front.
Yeah, the awning. So here's a bunch of stuff, right? So roof, the chimney, there's a reason for that because that's actually a flue. That's not a chimney. Plumbing, that's galvanized. So here's a fun fact. That's if the plumbing stack is not stack, sorry, plumbing vent, roof boot for the plumbing, there you go, is galvanized. Probably the rest of the house is galvanized and old too. Gutters, this is asbestos siding. Not saying that that's bad, but with what we need to do, this house is bad. Landscaping, and that's just the outside. So if we know the outside looks like this, the inside probably looks just as good, if not worse, right? So, but if we're traditional landlords, we're going to run away from this. But a house flipper is going to run towards it. A BRRRR investor might be able to make it work, right? Buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. So the construction allows us to turn that into this. So this is the same house, right?
That's beautiful.
So,
Man.
so keep this in mind, right? Here's the thing with BRRRRs. A great BRRRR has to be a good flip first. It has to be a good flip. You can't have a BRRRR without it being a flip. Now you can have a flip not be a BRRRR for sure. So that is a property that only works as a flip. But you have to have the BRRRR has to work out as a flip first before it's a BRRRR, which means you're basically taking a messed up property, putting money into it to force the appreciation through construction to make it look like this and make it worth more, right? At that point, you refinance, hopefully get most of your money out of the deal, and have it cash flow, which is what we all want, right? So a good BRRRR has to be a good flip. So additionally, it helps you take, this is actually another BRRRR of mine. Look, there's proof that I was at the property at one point. These are beautiful, to me, these are beautiful potential rentals, right? Because of the construction that has to be done to them. Same house, we kept that rental for about 3 years, and then we 1031 exchanged it into a commercial property after 3 years. We got 120K out of it and so forth because we forced the appreciation. We didn't have to pay the taxes on it, which you can't do on a flip. Flips, you have to pay taxes like crazy. But keeping the properties, forcing the appreciation, selling it even a year later allows for a 1031 exchange for various reasons and stuff like that. So, and that's what we did with that one. Really, the biggest thing that flips has done for me is allowed me to deal with these guys. So being able to, in my opinion, a huge part of real estate is construction, whether we like it or not. If I would have known that, I would have never got into real estate. So, because I did not like construction at all. But it's made us very good at dealing with these guys. So let's talk about flipping properties versus holding properties. Some of you guys already know this. But this is why I was addicted to flips for so long and still kind of a thing for me. Like I still have to I still scratch the itch every now and then and get a flip. But if you're flipping 10 houses and making 30K per average per flip in a year, then after 12 months, you made $300,000 profit. Now that's before income tax. So nobody throw that in there. But let's just say that you flip 10 houses, make 30K each property before income tax. You are making $300,000 net. Sounds good, right? A lot of people love that. Versus if you're buying and holding 10 amazing, and these are amazing houses, right? So each cash flowing $350 a month. We'd all love $350 a month cash flow, right? That'd be great on every single door we got. If you bought 10 of those, Then at 3,500 a month in total cash flow for 10, that's 42,000 a year. So essentially, this is how I looked at it forever, by the way. How many of us would rather make $300,000 this year or $42,000 this year? If this is the only thing you're looking at, 300K this year or 42K this year? Who wants what? It's not a trick question, right?
I've been doing the 42.
All right, so almost 300, 300. I mean, okay, because you maybe know better, Brady, right? So I'll tell you what, for me,
I want consistency and predictability. That's my main thing.
dude, I wanted to weigh my money. That's what I wanted to be able to do. So like, now, forget income tax for a second, right? But in a sense, like I was so addicted over here because all I looked at was the income I was making every year. I was addicted to income. This is wealth building, right? That's what this side is. And there's a lot of stuff that goes with this, right? So if I looked at it this way, this is all I ever looked at, guys. I have to do this for 7 years to make the same amount of money I make in 1 year. I'm like, no, thank you. I'm not waiting that long for that. Now, what really kind of woke me up though was more along the lines of this chart, which this is not perfect science, guys, right? Just so you know. But if you're making 300K, that's the blue line every year, then by year 7, if you're doing 10 houses a year as rentals, then by year 7, you're making 300K per year, but it continues to go and continues to go and go and go. So great. That's in a perfect world. We know stuff happens, stuff changes, whatever it might be. But the reality is there's a lot of other things we get when we keep properties that we don't get with flips. Flips, once I sell that house, that is the last time I ever make a dollar on that house ever again. That's it. It's gone. I also pay a lot of income tax on that money, typically. But when you're keeping a property, you have potential appreciation, especially if it's a BRRRR. You have tax benefits, which was a big thing for me that I didn't realize was such a big thing, tax depreciation. Leverage. The more rentals I keep, the better I am at getting financing, for my properties. Banks love that I have rentals. Banks love that I have equity in my rentals. Banks love that I'm financeable. It also forces me as a investor to get good at getting financed as well. So building wealth, passive income, freedom, it's awesome. So I'm a true believer in keeping properties over flipping properties these days, for sure. So that's why we focus on the BRRRR strategy, even to this day, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. So now, what changed everything, right, for me when it came to this business was learning how to keep things simple. So we're going to jump into that now. And this is where we're going to start getting into the real meat potatoes of like the how-to. So strategy, I just talked to you guys about strategy. Now we're going to get tactical, all right? So, and there's a lot here. So it all starts with this. So this is, everybody here has a business strategy. Every single person here on this call, whether you know it or not, has a strategy, right? And what I encourage everybody to do is take some time, even at this weekend or something like that, do what I did years ago in 2017. I sat down with my wife when I was starting to burn out in real estate. And we sat down with butcher paper over the course of a couple of weekends, and we started mapping out what we really wanted in our lives together. Like, did we want to, spend more time together? Did we want to travel? What kind of money did we make? We just started mapping that out. And once we figured out what we wanted in our lives, we started asking the question, how do we make our business give us what we want? Essentially what I think happens, and this happened to me too, which is we start working and building a business, and whatever life we have left over, we try to like fit in there. Versus in 2017, after mapping some stuff out with my spouse, we just said, like, why don't we figure out the life we want first, and then we try to make our business fit that. And that was a revolutionary moment for me at that time, and it completely changed everything we did. It's what got us into BRRRR renting and stuff too. But we changed our strategy. We went from like, let's stop flipping and let's focus on keeping as much as possible. Now we opportunistically flip, but we had to develop a strategy. So what's yours? What's your business strategy? What's your purpose? Do you do single family? Do you do multifamily? What markets are you in? What's your buy box? All that stuff is part of your strategy, and then the why behind it. Are you doing it for extra retirement funds? Are you doing it so that you could quit your job? Are you doing it so you can be full-time? What is the purpose of it? And then stick with that until you feel like changing. Once you have that figured out, then you could go look at acquisitions. That's how I see it. If we have our strategies mapped out, like I buy single family 1 to 4 unit. Right now I'm focused in Austin, Texas, right? That's my strategy right for it. I'm looking for BRRRs, I'm looking for ADU plays, and I'm looking for opportunistic flips in very specific zip codes, right? That's my strategy. So now I can go to my acquisitions and go find those properties. It's a lot easier to find deals when we know what we're looking for, right? But now in acquisitions, we have to determine how to underwrite the deal, which I'll get into a little bit of that quickly, right? How do we underwrite the deal? How do we know it's a deal that is a good BRRRR strategy for me? How do we know I can do an ADU play on it, accessory dwelling unit? How do I know it's going to work out for me in the end for cash flow and rehab and construction and all great stuff? That's part of underwriting. I'll tell you the secret. You don't figure that stuff out after you buy the deal, right? We have to figure that stuff out before we buy it. You never lose money on a deal you don't buy, right? And take it from somebody that's lost plenty of money over the years in different deals. I would have rather just not bought it, right, to begin with. So figure out an acquisition strategy, but also map it to your business strategy and then figure out how to underwrite quickly. Some of you guys invest out of state. There's a whole thing with that we'll get into a little bit. Once we understand how to do our acquisitions and what we're looking for, then of course we have to buy it, right? So that is funding, that's transaction coordination, all that great stuff. So we have to have our funding in place. And funding, most of us aren't independently wealthy to buy all these properties cash. Most of us have to borrow money, right? I borrow money, we all borrow money. So that's OPM, other people's money. Here's a trick. It is way better to borrow money when you don't need it, right? That's the trick. So getting your financing set up and getting your funding set up before you need it is the trick. So it's very hard to find the money when you need it if you didn't already have it secured. So that's when we go talk to hard money lenders. That's when we talk to our credit unions. That's when we get qualified. That's when we find JV partners, joint venture partners for equity, whatever it is, but find that before you find the deal, or at least have access to it. It makes it a lot easier. And then funding transaction coordination is a big deal when you're doing volume. It's not a big deal if you're doing one house, right? Most of us can handle transaction coordination for one house. That's escrow and dealing with title and all that stuff. But when we're doing 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 houses at a time, it can become a bit of a hot mess if we don't have a process for it. So now here's where things change. This is where I really push people when it comes to investing in real estate and that's stage number 4. And we're going to pretty much the majority of this webinar, we're going to spend on stage 4. And yes, I know we're 40 minutes in. I talk a lot, but I hope this helps. So that said, planning. So how do we do planning of the construction, the rehab, how do we execute the actual strategy? So we go back to our original strategy. If we're buying, rehabbing, renting, refinancing, repeating, like how do we actually execute the plan of the property to maximize the ARV, to get the rents that we need to get and all that stuff? We spend the most of our time, this is where we go slow to go fast, right? We want to figure out what we really need to do to the property. How do we plan it out? Let's get bids with contractors. Let's get the scope of work done. Let's get the budgets figured out. Let's make sure that whatever we're doing for finishes matches what our ARV after repair value needs to be. I would rather sit on a property for a month doing nothing to it than jumping in it and having problems later, right? Once we figured out what we're going to do to the property and we're fully engaged with the plan, we have our bids, scopes, everything, finishes figured out, then we can start construction. That's my rule, right? And we'll get into a little bit of that today too. And then lastly, once construction's done, we tie all this together for one, right? So everything should be working together. Acquisition should work with funding, funding should work with planning, planning should work with rehab. And then once it's all done, then we get into the dispo stable phase. Disposition means sell it. Stabilization means refinance it, BRRRR, and then rent it out. And then that's another whole business of doing property management and all that great stuff too. So, but for me, this is my 6 stages. This is what we focus on whenever I start a new market, whenever I look to invest in something different. I start at the bottom. What's my strategy? How are we going to acquire properties? How are we going to pay for those properties? What do we do for planning, rehab? And then are we going to dispo or stable? And if we do it right, then we can just repeat it over and over and over again, right? Hope this makes sense. And this is the new, each one of these stages we can spend days on, right? For today, you guys are going to get at least another 30 minutes of me talking about at least planning big time, right? And the construction stuff. Let's go. So brief touch on acquisitions. Develop a buy box, right? So write this down. What is your buy box? Spend time looking at your buy box, right? And a buy box is what are you looking for? And that could be your asset class, multifamily, commercial, office space, single family, 1 to 4 unit, whatever it is. 6plex, 8plex, 4plex, duplex, whatever, right? Size type, right? What specific type is it going to be? Geography, what area are you going to invest in? You could say that you would invest in a city, but you might be very specifically invested in certain city blocks, right? Which depending on what city you're in could be actually really, really important. I spent a lot of years doing Tacoma and Seattle, Washington. I'll tell you, one block is not the same as the other block. I've invested a lot of money since 2024 in Savannah, Georgia. I promise you, if you've ever been to Savannah, Georgia, one block is not the same as the next block, right? So understanding that is very crucial, and it can be very costly if you're not watching it. So what is your minimum target margin, right? What kind of ROI are you trying to get? For me, for a long time on my flips, I wanted to get at least a 15% cash on cash on the flip once the project is done. And that's a project cost, right? Project margin. For my rentals, for my BRRRs, for a long time, I wanted infinite until that wasn't a thing. It's not a thing anymore. I want a minimum of 6% on the money that I leave into the deal these days. That's my minimum, right? And so as far as a rental BRRRR. Level of rehab is important. We're going to jump into that. There's cosmetic rehabs, there's transformations, there's alterations, there's new builds, there's spec builds, there's all sorts of stuff when it comes to rehab. Knowing your skill set for your market is crucial. If you're in a market like Seattle, Washington, there's no cosmetic rehabs, right? They just don't exist. There are 100-year-old houses in downtown Seattle, and they require $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a remodel. That's just what it takes there. And so versus there's plenty of markets in the United States that 20K, 30K, 40K in rehab cosmetically gets a lot done. So, but know your level of rehab and don't overstep it until you get good at it. We'll talk about that. What's your volume that you can handle? Do you have a max project volume? At the height of my business, I would say in 2015 is when we did the like we were just going, right? We had 27 active rehab projects going on at any one time, right? I didn't have a limit. I just said we buy it and figure it out. So
how many project managers did you have on staff at the time?
one. And so
Wow.
it's
Good project manager.
No, it's a long story there. I had another support person that helped out with like finishes and all stuff. She ended up taking a lot of load, but I spent a lot of my time in the project stuff too. So like I was involved in the construction rehab, but we learned lessons, let's just say, right? Our sweet spot now is a project manager, and then I just handle the strategy. I'm still involved in the rehab, but I'm good at the strategy. That's my thing. Nice. So, but what we've learned is how to say no. Like we don't do that anymore. The max we'll do is 10 at a time now, right? Just because so I don't have to hire more and all that kind of stuff. So we keep it at a certain limit. Additionally, our level of rehab, we don't do transformations, right? And we'll get into that. We do alterations, right? So we'll add bathrooms, we'll move stuff around, but I'm not changing loads, right, on the house. There's all these things. So I'm not doing second stories, like meaning adding a second story. I'm not digging out basements. We're not doing that stuff. And then do you have any niches? Are you a short-term rental niche, a mid-term rental niche? Are you an ADU niche, right? Accessory dwelling unit. What do you have any niches? Like what's your thing, right? That's an aspect too. So develop your buy box and then go look for properties. So get to know fast.
Real quick.
Go ahead.
One thing, I'll be curious to hear from everyone in the chat right now. Have you developed your buy box yet? Or is it simply just any good deal? This is just purely from my own selfish curiosity. So let me know in the chat if you have a buy box, yes or no. And then JD Brown had a good question. Who's doing acquisitions at that time with a small team? Was that you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll tell you how, so even to this day, the majority of acquisitions we do is from wholesalers and real estate agents. So the reason why, like I'm an events company. The events company got created on accident because we started doing a meetup in Seattle. And the reason why we were doing the meetup is so that we can meet wholesalers. Because Seattle, you didn't buy on market for a long time. Like by 2017, you just kind of stopped buying on market. Everything was off market. But we started a meetup so we can meet wholesalers so that they could bring us the deals. So I'm not getting into this in this presentation, but I have another whole thing on this where an acquisitions business is not the same as an investment business. An acquisitions business focuses on off-market marketing, talking to sellers. Their CRM is a seller. An operations business, an investment business like what I have, our CRM is an address, right? So acquisitions focuses on the person and the seller. An investment business focuses on the address and the property, right? Like that's the big delineation that I hope people understand. For us, we focused on the address, right? And that meant we had to go meet and network with wholesalers and agents that focused on the seller and brought us the deals. That's what we did. And so, nice. And still to this day, like I started to meet up in Austin so we can meet wholesalers, right? So but we don't go direct to seller. I definitely got started out that way in 2005. We've definitely touched that stove a few times. It's just not our business. I would rather pay somebody else to go do that. So meaning a wholesaler, a real estate agent, stuff like that. Yeah. And then what ends up happening is that I can have 30 wholesalers and 20 agents sending me stuff versus me trying to find one at a time. Like I get all the stuff. And that's where reputation comes in. Like if you have, like we let any wholesaler and agent drive our properties. We're very open with our education. We're very open because we want them to like us, right? So they bring us the deal. What's more important on that acquisition side was that if it's a no, we say no quickly because this thing here, saying no is easy when you know what you say yes to. We say no quickly and we tell them why. And we say, hey, this might not be for us. Here's why. If you find something like that, bring it back to us, and we educate them. And then additionally, when we say we're going to close, we always close. We will never say yes to a property and back out. We will say maybe, right? But as soon as we say yes, we close, period. And that reputation, like, is massively important if you're dealing with wholesalers and agents and stuff. So they'll bring you the deal if you say you close, right? It's that simple. But it's a pain. You got to deal with a lot of people. You got to deal with a lot of bad deals, right? That, like, quote, bad deals. You got to deal with a lot of garbage, right? It's just what it is. But it's part of our strategy and what we do. So anyways, good times. That said, here's the subject property. So this is a property I bought in Savannah, Georgia last year. And so AKA POS, Google it. This is what it looks like. So the messed up house, right? Yay, it's a little brick house, no big deal, right? This is the type of stuff that I get excited about when I see a house that looks like this. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. If you buy it for the right price, then we know we can remodel and rehab it, right? A lot of stuff wrong with it. You can't see from the photos too much, but if you look here, when you're there, this is all very squishy, right? And so all this here by the toilet is very, very squishy, which is normal. This is a 100-year-old house. So if you have a 100-year-old house that's never been remodeled, the subfloor in the bathroom is probably very squishy, right? Which means a lot of rot and all that great stuff. So this is the kitchen. Lovely, right? Yes. Backyard. The fence has already been demoed, so that's great. And it's an ugly house, right? Now, we get a house like that sent to us, then we need to analyze it. So we spent a lot of time, instead of learning how to find off-market deals, we spent a lot of time learning how to underwrite them so we could do it quickly, right? And so for us in our buy box, this is literally my checklist. There's a book that I recommend to everybody called the Checklist Manifesto. It's by Atul Gawande, Checklist Manifesto. It's a red book, great book. It's a story actually about medical industry, believe it or not, but it's a whole book that teaches you the importance of, like, how to make a checklist. And all a system is, like a system or SOP, standard operating position, standard operating process, or however you say it, procedure, standard operating procedure. There you go. Sorry. Is really just a checklist at the end of the day, most of the time, right? And this is our checklist. When we're underwriting a deal, we set up Dropbox. We do an analysis of the property, which is the detail portion of it. We do full photos. We do an analysis super sheet, which is our little, like, P&L sheet. Meter box, we take pictures of the meters. We get a sketch up of the floor plan. We do an initial scope of work. We do an analysis folder checklist, and we do the red flags checklist. And that's our way of underwriting the property. When we do a sketch, this is the house, right? So it's literally came from the assessor parcels site, and we just drew on it. So we're like, all right, living room, bedroom, bathroom, hallway, bedroom, dining, kitchen. There's your little floor plan. It's that simple, right? Sometimes. And then we check out the red flags list, which I'll get into here in a minute. And we just double check all that stuff. And then we run it on a profit and loss spreadsheet to see if it works. So this is the initial numbers on this property, which is why you can see why we bought it. Our offer price was $132. We estimated $100K in rehab because Savannah is expensive. After repair value is $340,000 based on the ARV and comps. We thought we'd hold it for 4 months to fix it up. This is the holding cost for tax, insurance, debt. That includes hard money. And selling cost if we sold it, because we looked at this originally as a flip. Cash profit, yay, that looks really, really good. Very high ROI. We were very excited about it. Cool. Now, we had to fund it. I'm actually going to skip this a little bit, but essentially when it comes to funding deals, you need time, money, expertise, and to do any deal. And in a nutshell, like, you have to have the time, you have to have the expertise, and you have to have the money, but you don't need to have all three yourself, right? For us, I have the expertise these days, right? I hire people for time and I find somebody else to put up the money, right? Like a private money lender, hard money lender, whatever that is, right? So, but either way, you need all three to do the deal. It's just to say you don't have to have all three. When I was brand new, I had all the time, but I had no expertise. So I just, like, door knocked and tried to figure out how to get properties, or got paid by people to do it. When I finally had the expertise, I hired people and then whatever, right? So getting into the planning, this is stage 4, right? Now we bought the property. So we found the property, that POS property. We bought the property, right? Because it's a good deal because we underwrote it. It looks great, right? And now we're going to plan the property. This is where we're going to spend pretty much the whole rest of the webinar is on this stage right here, Brady. So this is where we're getting the nitty gritty of the construction, right? That's why you guys are here, learn construction. So everybody must plan. This is important. my rule for construction in our business is that before we could start doing construction and actually like knocking down walls and doing all that stuff, we need to have a scope of work, like that's the scope. We need to have our budgets finalized. I should put finalized on there. We need to have finishes laid out, knowing what we're going to do for finishes. And we have to have a process for onboarding contractors and getting bids and all that great stuff, right? So this is during the planning phase, we're doing these 4 things at a minimum, right? There's a lot more you can do while planning out the property, but this is the 4 that we need in order to start to the next phase, which is rehab construction. So now I say budgets, and I mean more finalized budgets. So there's a lot of times I've bought a property where I put the budget down for 50 grand, let's just say, and for $50,000 for rehab and construction, right? But then after buying the property, we find like problems behind the walls, or like there was more damage than we thought, and then the budget changes, right? Now that sometimes happens in a change order, right? Where all of a sudden you start the project for 50K and then contractors come back and they say, hey, we found something behind the walls. Here's a change order for 5 grand. For me, before we start everything, I want to find everything wrong with the property as much as possible before we start. So that way, if we budgeted 50K and we found more work, then we need to finalize the budget to 60K, then I'd rather do that now than get a change order for 10K later and be surprised. So that's what I mean by finalized budgets. Now finishes, SOW stands for scope of work or statement of work, both are the same. Finishes are like, what tile are you picking out? What paint color are you going to have? Like what kind of doors are you doing? What flooring are you using? So those are finishes, like faucets and stuff like that, right? And the reason why I think that's important to pick a lot of that stuff out before you start is because if you're by yourself doing this stuff and you like to do it yourself, you can skip literally this entire webinar. But if you're trying to do it by hiring contractors and make your life easier and free up your time and stuff like that, then this is where I think this is crucial. If you've done this business long enough and you're not picking finishes out in advance, then every one of us has had the phone call from a contractor that's out at Home Depot going like, hey, I'm in the tile aisle. What tile do you want? I'm going to start tomorrow. And you're in the middle of dinner at your kid's soccer game or something. You're like, oh crap, I don't know. And then you have to drop everything and go figure out what tile that needs to happen and what grout needs to be picked out, right? It's way easier if you just pick that out before you start the project. And then that way you hand it to the contractor and go like, here's the tile, here's the grout, right? There's a real big rule that I learned the hard way. Never let your contractor pick out the finishes. Like just don't. So, let your realtor can help you with it. Hire an interior designer if you really want to. Somebody else needs to pick out the finishes besides your contractor, in my opinion.
I think that's good advice. I have a quick question. Let me know if I'm jumping the gun.
Oh, go for it, dude.
How much buffer or contingency do you have in your rehab budget?
That's a good question. So, man, I do it a little bit differently than other people do it.
I imagine if you're newer, it's double whatever you're doing.
Yeah, right. It can be. My buffer, I'll tell you what my buffer is. This is my buffer right here. So my cash on cash return is my buffer, is how I look at it. Now, I'm not saying that's how you should do it. Everybody does it differently. My minimum is 15%. That means like I'm doing really, really good on this property, right? Which means I can spend probably 120 to 125,000 on rehab if I wanted to still hit my minimum, right? So I look at it a little differently. I look at the project's cash on cash. If I'm at a 14.99% cash on cash return, I have no buffer on that rehab then. That's how I see it, right? Which means we're doing it for like the tightest margin ever and we better be on point, right? That's a very uncomfortable project for me at that point, unless I built buffer into the rehab already. But so I'm more looking at like the risk. This is risk. This cash on cash return is risk. That's how I see it. The higher this number is, the less risk. The lower the number is, the more risk, and the more I need to be sure on these numbers. The higher this number is, the less I need to be sure on these numbers, right? Because it's more buffer. The smaller this number is, the more I need to be tighter and more confident that I'm very right that it is 100K in rehab or whatever it is, and the ARV is 340, that kind of thing. Because there's a lot there that I could unpack with you on another webinar.
Yeah.
No, that's how I see it.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So risk is everything. I'm a big fan of mitigate risk before focusing on upside. Right? I think a lot of people have lost a lot of money because they're focused on the profit and the upside and not focused on the risk and the downside. So be conservative. That's my advice to everybody. So pick your rehab type. So you can do cosmetic, which we've all heard that, lipstick on a pig, right? So That's just doing paint, carpet, doors, whatever. You're updating the finishes on the property. You're updating the faucets and painting it and maybe changing the cabinets out, but you're not changing the floor plans. You're not replacing the infrastructure. You're just lipsticking it. That's cosmetic. Then there's alterations. Alterations is really what I focus on, which is like, I'm buying a property right now in Austin that is a 3-bedroom, 1-bath ranch style home. I will turn it into a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, right? And add a primary suite to it, right? So good stuff. That's an alteration. I'm adding a bathroom, moving some walls around. I'm also going to update the HVAC system and electrical, plumbing, and all that great stuff, right? That's an alteration. So I'll do full kitchen updates, move the kitchen if I have to, add bedrooms, add bath. We're basically taking the existing square footage footprint and altering it. Where it gets different is we're not adding to it. I'm not adding an addition. I'm not adding a pop top. I'm not doing any of that, digging out a basement. I'm not doing that stuff. We're taking the existing footprint and altering it. That's what I love to do. That's what I'm good at, right? It also makes it so I don't have to do permitting as much. We still permit, but we don't have to do as much permitting and stuff. Transformations is another level. Transformations are, you're not only just gutting out the house, but you're also maybe adding an addition. You're maybe adding a second story. You're maybe digging out a basement, right? You're completely changing the loads on the house, completely re-engineering it. That's a transformation. Putting dormers in, doing all that stuff, right? That's where you're taking a little crappy house and turning it into this ginormous, amazing house. That's a transformation, right? Like a massive remodel. There's plenty of neighborhoods, not neighbors, there's plenty of markets that's what you need to do, like Seattle's one of those. And so forth. And then there's new construction, like spec building, whatever, urban infill, that kind of stuff. That's tearing it down to build something new. So those are your 4 types. Now, there's more. There's all sorts of crap, right? That's out there, ADUs, DADUs, that kind of stuff. But point is that everybody on this call should pick what they're comfortable with, right? Every one of us would love to have cosmetic flips that are like, 30% cash on cash all day, right? Like for sure. But those don't always exist. Most of the real value in real estate happens in this alteration and transformation side when you're doing any kind of rehab, good BRRRs, that kind of thing. I'm a huge fan of the alterations. I stay away from the transformations because I can't scale that. It's very hard for me to scale that. But I can scale alterations all day, and cosmetics are a blessing when you find a cosmetic as far as I'm concerned. So, but pick what's good for you. If you're brand new, know nothing about construction, you should probably stay away from the transformation side. That's my opinion.
I feel like,
All right.
I mean, just from projects I've seen, transformation, you have such more risk for it going way past your timeline, way over budget. There's just too many variables, especially
And permitting and all sorts of stuff. Like Seattle, it takes 4 to 6 months to get a permit. Like if you're going to do any kind of transformation, you just got to add that to the budget, right? So and timeline. So it's no quick fixes there. You just can't get away from it. So know that. Now, do you need to know everything in rehab? No, but you do need to have a process for the rehab that you're doing, right? What is your process? How are you going to handle it? The lesson that I want everybody to have is that you're going to be, the more we're doing this business, the more we're going to like have our own experiences. I'm just encouraging you all to write it down as you go. So if you start getting bids from contractors, how did you do that, right? Did you just like call a bunch from Facebook groups or whatever? Just write it down, right? And if you call a contractor, put it in a spreadsheet. That's the process. So you don't have to look them up again, right? Like anything you're doing, this is my advice. Just write it down, put it in a spreadsheet, put it somewhere so you don't have to resource it again. If you call a tile company, put it in a spreadsheet, put down you called them. Even if they're expensive, write down that they're expensive and then move on. So that way, when you do another project, you're not like, oh, what was that company again? Like, were they expensive or not? Like, you already have that information. And then you just don't have to, what I'm trying to get at is like, how do you do the work one time instead of the same work over and over again? Like, so that's what I'm trying to get at. So have a process. Here's a great book. This is a good buddy of mine. I'm going to see him tomorrow, actually. Jay Scott. Jay Scott wrote the book on how to estimate, the book on estimating rehab costs in bigger pockets. In my opinion, this is the best book on rehab and construction out there, like for investors. Like if you're in the investor mentality, this is the best book out there. And I think everybody should buy it. Huge fan of this book. You got to read it a little bit differently. It's not like a how-to book. You got to think of it as like, I need to get a roof bid, so go to the roof section, right? I need to talk about decks, so go to the deck section, right? I need to look at paint, go to the painting section. So like the order of the chapters is also the order of construction too. So just a spoiler alert. But it's a very good manual to reference. It also makes you sound really smart. So I read this book in 2015, believe it or not. And I know it's hard to believe. I didn't know much about rehab in 2015, even though it did tons of deals, but everything we did was cosmetic, right? I didn't start getting into massive alterations until 2015. And the everything before that was cosmetic, right, for the most part. But for But what I'm getting at is that I remember I learned what a ledger board was. And I learned what a ledger board was because of this book. I'm not going to tell you what a ledger board is. You got to look it up yourself. But I learned what it was with this book. And I'm with a contractor literally the next day looking at a deck where a ledger board happens to be. And I'm like, what do you think about that ledger board? Sounded super smart. And they took me seriously after that. So anyways, versus like, what's that doohickey? What's that thing called? Like that makes contractors realize you don't know what you're talking about. So great book, highly recommend it. I don't get paid anything to promote it. So, all right. So what does success look like in planning? So before we start a project, these are the 4 things, like I said: scope of work, bids, floor plans, finished packets. That's what we want to have done before we start rehab. This is an example of a contract, right? That we would have signed up with a contractor. This is an example of a scope of work. Now this is a heavy scope of work, so don't get too afraid of it. You can have a pretty simple scope of work too. This is just a line item that we'd like to use. This is the floor plan for that house. So this is the scope. This is that house from Savannah. These are the actual like contract scopes, everything right for it. This is the proposed floor plan. So if you remember, the kitchen used to be over here. So we decided, let's build a wall and move the kitchen closer, make that a laundry room. That's really the only thing we changed in the floor plan. So we did that. And then there's our floor plan. And then here's the finishes that we wanted to pick out, right? Never let a contractor pick finishes out. Outsource this if you're not good at it. I suck at finishes. I have never picked a single finish out on a house I've ever done at all. I'm the worst person to pick out paint colors. I'm partially colorblind. I should never do it. It was the very first thing I outsourced was somebody else picking the finishes, and it was a realtor. I just had realtors do it for me, and then eventually we had it like a finished packet that looks like this made for us, so we could just duplicate it and so forth. So now another thing during the planning phase is double checking all these big ticket red flags. So let's play a game, right? I'm not going to go over all these things, but there's a list that you guys can get if you want. I'll give it away for free, but let's play I Spy. So Brady, you get to be, everybody else in the chat gets to participate too, but we're going to go through this quickly. Brady, you get to answer this as well. So what is the red flag that's standing out? This is an easy one. There's no trick on this one. What's the big red flag on this house? The roof. That's it, right? Pretty simple.
I'm also curious, why is there one window in this funny looking garage door? But
I think there's one on the other side too. So like, no,
okay,
so it's whatever. But the roof, right? Pretty easy. Guys, if we're getting a picture of this house, we should be like, I didn't know the roof was wrong, right? Like, so there's something wrong with this roof, so we need to check it out. Cool, right? Red flag, check. Oh, this one's tough, especially if you're on a phone, you might not see it. There's a couple red flags on this one, but there's a big red flag on this one. So what are they, Brady?
I mean, you've got your railings leading up to the steps. Looks like they're about to fall over and kill someone. Sure. Gutters,
yeah.
Maybe
the roof.
Too.
We already know the roof, right? I'll give you guys the roof. Somebody said foundation. Somebody said
Is that mold on the bottom of the house?
You're looking too into it. There is a big, giant red flag.
The tree? Oh yeah,
tree.
The tree's growing into the house. Right? Oh my goodness!
Look at that. Because here's a better angle. There's the tree, right? Now, why is this a red flag?
Oh my goodness!
Well, the tree could be hitting the roof. It causes, of course, a lot of roof damage. But more importantly, some people already said it, it has to do with the roots. It has to do with the foundation over time. There's no doubt in my mind, I already know this about this property, this foundation has been messed around with more than once because of the tree growing into it. Another reason why this could be a red flag, because this could be a protected tree depending on what city you're in. So keep that in mind. You might not be allowed to cut it down. So always know your city ordinances when it comes to trees. Okay, this one's pretty obvious, right? If somebody says, hey, the rehab's only 50K, you say, you're full of blah, right? So there's a lawn growing on the roof, right? There's a lot of over stuff. Now, why is this tarp here? That ends up being a carport, right? I'm not even gonna now another red flag would be the driveway, right? That's pretty messed up too. It's easy to skip this. If we're looking at house flips, right? Or trying to improve, we might make the house beautiful, but if this stays like this, then that takes away from the property, right? So this is an expense that a lot of people forget about is these cracked up driveways. Okay, this one's a tricky one. Look closely.
It's a railing again, at least.
Yeah, railing, okay, sure. Right. Red flag.
This looks like the back of the house.
Well, a lot of people on the it is the back of the house. A lot of people are saying the right answer. The hose bib, I love it. Yeah.
Oh, is that a sealed crack? Oh, yeah, the bottom left corner.
Yeah, right. I love that. Hose bib. Away. Nope, it's the hose bib. Victor's right. Anyways,
Oh, man.
yeah, that's the foundation, right? Like, you can see like I wish I could zoom in on this, but you can see like this cracked here and then went down. So you can see the sill plate, right? Or the rim joist, whatever that is, sill plate, rim joist thing. It's lower here, right? So it's cracked again. Now there's a gutter spout here and there's a gutter spout here. So like a downspout. Most of it's, especially this is Washington, by the way, Tacoma. Most of the time it's because people don't have downspouts or gutters and stuff is what causes a lot of foundation issues. But that's a big one, right? All right, what's the red flag here? This one's kind of obvious.
They're running a tire shop out of here?
A lot of tires,
They're
right?
running a
So
business out of here?
now
Holy cow.
I should get the photo of what this used to look like. So this property was a hoarder property that had like 20 cars on it, all that stuff, and lots of overgrown blackberry bushes, everything. Anybody quickly guess how many tires are here? Yeah, Dave said it right.
80.
Like lots of money to dispose of. Higher than 80. More
Higher
than
than 80? I thought it was
more than
high.
150. More than
Andrew says
300.
150. More
More than 300.
no.
Yeah. You can't see it. Like this goes back for a while. This is a big shop.
500?
407 tires. So
Oh my goodness.
now, why do I know it's 407 tires? It's because you have to pay for every single one of those to be disposed of. So they are very expensive. So you could spend $8 to $15 per tire, depending on where you're at. And with rim, out without rim, all those things are a thing. So 407 tires. I played this when we had this thing. I on my social media. I said, whoever guesses closest, I'll take them out to lunch. Right? It was a whole thing. It was fun. But that's and it was local. But yeah, so all these tires were hidden on the property, right? So it was a trash out property. It was a hoarder house. There's tires in the house, outside the house, in blackberry bushes. This is after we had them all collected and stacked up. So they were hidden throughout the property. So what looks like just trash, you start digging into it, sometimes it's a lot worse. And this is a very expensive trash situation. This is a really tricky one. This is a really tricky one. What is the
siding pulling
biggest
away from itself on the corner?
Okay, so right here, yeah.
Yeah.
So the deck, okay, it's worse than that. And this
You've
is a
got
huge red
something
flag.
next
This is only,
to those French doors too,
yep, only the experienced people know that this one is, right?
covering up a hole in the wall.
All right, there's got a couple people that are already saying it.
Power
like
lines going to the wall instead of the roof, or is that like a fiber line?
this thing here, that just depends on the mass, right? So, but let's see, lines. Chris says lines. Who said it first? JD said electrical mast. That's an option, but it's more than just the mast, right? Check the mast out. So this is the trick on this one. Oops, right. This mast, yeah, sure. The issue is not the mast. The issue is follow the cable. Now this is the power cable to the box outside on the street. It's coiled up here.
Snap.
Now,
way.
for those of you guys, yeah, really, not hooked up. Joseph said it. Now, here's how this usually works. If you don't pay your electrical bill, the city does not disconnect the cable and throw it on your deck. That's not what they do. What they do is they pop the meter. They typically take the meter from you, right? Now, most people are like, oh man, that sucks. Now I don't have power. Now, when you love drugs and you're very excited about that, and you don't want to pay your bills, you learn how to jump the meter, right? Like the owner of this house did that we bought the house from, right? So he jumped the meter for a very, very long time. And that pissed off the city to the point where the city disconnected it completely from the house, right? Now, why that's a red flag is because depending on the state you're in, depending on the city you're in, will depend on where the utilities go after the sale. In the state of Washington, the utilities follow the property, not the owner. So the fact that this is a coiled power cable, in some state, if you didn't know that, right, you'd think, oh, that's fine. Any utility bills and issues that are on there will go with the seller, right? It doesn't in Washington. It goes with the property, right? So this ended up being with back utility payments, all that stuff, everything. It was about an $8,000 fix to get that all taken care of, right? Now we caught that, right? Luckily, but that could be a big surprise if you're not in it on the utility stuff. This one, I'll just tell you guys for time's sake on this one. Sure, this is opened up, right? All that great stuff, cool. You got issues up here too, cool. But the big thing is actually this over here. So this is the mast, right? So you can see the mast. It's this dinky little mast. This is an issue, right? Obviously, so that's going to be expensive to fix up. Pickers, all that great stuff. So this is a tricky one. Spoiler alert for time's sake. There's nothing wrong with the outside of this house. But the outside can be deceiving because this is not later. This house, right when we bought it, right? So we already knew about this. It wasn't a surprise. But at the time this photo was taken, at the exact same time, the inside of the house looked like this, right? So there was a total burnout of the property from the back side of the house that you can see from the front. So on the outside, if you're buying like a foreclosure at auction, this is like, oh, there's nothing wrong with this house at all. It looks great, right? But then this is what it actually looked like on the inside. So we got a great deal on it. So all good there. Man, I forgot I had so many photos on here. So spoiler alert on this one. I'll give you 5 seconds, Brady. What's wrong with this house? What's the biggest red flag? And let's just say you can taste it.
Oh yeah, is that animal poop?
This is all cat poo. And for those of you guys that
Nice.
are intimately familiar with what cat urine smells like, cat smell, cat poo, whatever you call it, that is extremely hard to get rid of if you don't know how to get rid of it. So, and getting rid of that smell. So that could be you don't want to fix this house up and have that cat smell still be there. Because trust me, it will be unless you take proper steps, which like oil-based kills and a bunch of other stuff that you got to do, ozone machines and da-da-da-da-da, right? This is just the stairs. This is completely out of code, right? This one's galvanized, right? So this is a thing. If you want one tip or trick to find out what kind of plumbing you have is go to the top of the hot water tank, right? It'll show galvanized plumbing. I'll tell you what's in the house most of the time. All right, so this one is a tricky one if you haven't done this enough. This is where change orders come from, right? So both of these bathrooms are the same style house, which is called a ranch style home. I love them. They're easy, right? They're usually built between 1950 and 1979 for the most part. Some of them are 86, give or take. But most of them stopped being built after the mid 80s. But ranch style home, the rectangles, everybody's already seen them. So the biggest red flag that could have hidden damage on these properties.
Let's say water collecting at the base of the tub. Is that it? Rotting out subfloor right there?
JD had it right. So Andrew has it right in the chat for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And the biggest reason, so imagine these homes, both of these were 1950s, 1960s ranch style homes. So for 50 years, this water spout, right, from the shower head has been hitting this windowsill for 50 years, right? And so I guarantee, we bought both of these. I guarantee you, whenever I see a window like this in a 1950s, 60s, 70s house, I'm like, I don't even need to guess. The framing is rotted, like behind here, as it is, right? So when somebody says change order, you're like, no, we just need to already know there's probably rotted framing in there, right? Like it's just what it is, right? So, all right. This is free. There's no hidden ties to this, guys. Like I have a entire red flags checklist book. I think it's like 15 pages. I don't know. But it's free on there. It's tarlyarber.com/rehab-red-flags, or you can scan that QR code. And I'll say there's 2 45-minute videos that break down how to walk the exterior of a house and the interior house to look for red flags, right? And it also comes with a 15, 16 page workbook that comes with it. No strings attached, totally free. You go on my website, it's free, whatever. And so everything we just went over, I go over way more in those videos to source red flags, find them, walk construction, and all that stuff. So take a moment for that. Check it out.
That's fantastic. Thanks for
Enjoy it. It's about an hour and a half worth of extra, strictly construction stuff, right? All right.
Nice.
Time's sake, there's no secret way to learning construction. You got to get in the field and walk houses. This is what it is. Either you need to learn construction or somebody on your team has to. Determine the level of rehab by the comps, right? So it doesn't matter how much you love the house. If the comparables on the house don't support quartz countertops and true stone, whatever tile, then like you probably shouldn't do it. It's probably a waste of money. And so you don't live in these houses. So just keep that in mind. So the level of rehab and the level of finish work depends on the comparables of the neighborhood, right? So don't go too low, don't go too high, right? Build a support team, meet people, take them with you. That's what I did, right? I'd have other investors go with me to properties. I'd be like, I don't know how this works. You want to take me? There's plenty of, wherever city you live in or invest in, there's plenty of investors that would love to help out other investors, like, and talk to them, meet with them, do whatever. Go to meetups, go to local meetups, go to events, right? Meet other investors, people here. There's 268 people watching this live. Like some of you guys are probably in the same city, and help each other out. It's just, there's no competition on that stuff. It's just for fun. Bigger pockets, all that great stuff. If you're walking in and there's a seller in it, another way a trick that I loved doing when we used to walk properties with sellers in them is always ask them if possible, What have you always wanted to do to this house is a great question to ask a seller. And they will point out to you almost everything wrong with the house, right? And they'll also tell you really good ideas on how to rehab and remodel it too, right? You'd be surprised. So I'm just curious, you've been here for 15 years. What have you always wanted to do to this house? And they're like, oh, let me list. The roof sucks. This happened here. I got to crack the foundation, right? But I also thought I'd add a bedroom if I did, whatever. They know what they want to do to it. They'll tell you almost always, right?
That's a great question.
Lean on professionals. So this is actually how I learned construction at the end of the day, is that so a lot of us hire homeowner inspectors, right? Which is great. But go with them, right? And what I started doing, especially when I was doing volume, I didn't want to spend $500 on an inspection. So what I ended up doing is I started working out with inspectors to be like, hey, can I pay you for 2 hours or an hour to walk the property with me instead, right? And then you don't need to give me a 20-page report or 50-page report, which is where they spend a lot of their time. Just take photos of all the bad stuff and then tell me why it's bad, right? And now most of those home inspectors have no problem walking the properties. They'll be like, yeah, that's great, because then you don't need to go on the computer. So I got it down to where like most of the guys I was paying $150 to go through the whole house. I'd have a notepad, and I'd hear them in the crawl space being like, oh, there's something wrong with whatever, and I'd write it down, right? And then they would take photos and they'd show me and then give me the photos. And then I'd ask questions like, well, why is the water heater out of code, right? And that's all I did. And then after I was done with the construction, I'd bring the inspector back and say, go find something wrong with it. And then they'd go through it again. And then I'd be like, okay, now why? And that would be before paying the GC their final pay, right? Like, so I would do that too. But I wasn't paying $500 for a full inspection. I was paying $150 to get them to just walk it and teach me, right? And I did that until I had it figured out, until I knew why a water heater was out of code in King County, Washington, or why this, whatever. I just knew that, right? Because I asked the questions. So huge tip there, if you want to save money and learn fast, in my opinion. All right, moving on. Rehab construction. We're not going to spend much time on this stuff, but basically, if you guys just follow me on all that planning stuff, there's a lot that I just went over, right, Brady? So a lot of stuff. But we get to here. So if we did all the things that I said, right, found all the red flags, did all the stuff, mapped it out, got bids, did the things, then we could finally start construction, right? And we get these guys to go out there, do the job. We got to still manage them. So we got to look for quality control. And that's what we're going to spend some time on, is QC. So this is a Dropbox folder. You guys, I mean, it's literally the same Dropbox folder I use all the time. We do analysis before rehab, rehab purchase, whatever. Go to Rehab Picks. We store every single week. We take pictures of our properties while they're in construction. And so the property that we did in Savannah, Walbrook, finished work, right? So we can see on June 14th, there was finished work going on, and Austin took the photos, right? These are the photos of June 14th, right? When the photos were taken. And we can see that there was 70 photos taken on June 14th of the property in the middle of rehab. These are some of the pictures of that property we've been following in Savannah that we might have forgotten about, because I talked about a lot of other stuff. But this is that little 2-bedroom house. And I live in Austin, and I have somebody else taking photos for me, and they're dating them and putting them in the Dropbox folder for me. I pay them $50. That's what I pay them. So $50 to go there, a third-party person to go drive the property for me, take photos, and check on the rehab for me weekly, right? That's what I do. And so from out of state.
Tarl, I'm curious, why weekly? Was there I'm guessing there's a mistake or a pain point behind why you do it weekly now as opposed to like every so often?
One, so it becomes a habit. The week that you skip is the week that it got broken into, or a flood happened, or something, whatever happened. It's always what happens. And it always it forces somebody to check on it regularly. It also makes sure that the contractor, especially when we're out of state, knows that somebody's checking on it regularly, so they're showing up. It allows me to be able to see if anything even happened. So if a contractor, I can't tell you how many times a contractor said, I didn't do that. And they're like, dude, I have photos of the property right before you went to it, and it wasn't there. And then right after you left it, it was. So I have a lot of strong feelings about taking 100 photos of the property every week, right? And there's been a lot of amazing things that have helped me with these photos. And I'll just tell you one, even if you have a disagreement with a contractor later and legality starts jumping in for whatever reason, trust me, these photos make things way better, right? Just having those. Now, that's very rare. That's happened to me in the 15, 16 years of being full-time. That's happened to me like 3 times ever, right? So most contractors are our friends. We love them, and so forth. But it's good when you need them. All right, so you get to the dispo stable phase. This is the same product, the same house. Like we skim coated the front with stucco. We changed out the front here. Yay, beautiful house, new windows, new everything. That's the before and after. Before and after, same area, right? Before and after, before and after, before and after, right? Yay. Final numbers, purchase 132, rehab went up 10 grand, right? So we just were new to all that stuff. Sale price, this is what it appraised for. We didn't sell it. We ended up getting it appraised for 344. It took us 6 months. The reason why it took 6 months is because of permitting, and we had no idea it was going to take so long, and we were still kind of new to Savannah at the time. If we sold it, right, it would cost $34,000 in selling costs. We didn't sell it. We rehabbed it. We kept it as a rental. We would have profited 62,000, but we decided to keep it. We refinanced it instead. So it appraised for 344. We refinanced it to pay all the stuff off. $2,500 a month in rents. It cash flows like 200 bucks, right? That's all it does. But we kept it as a rental instead of a flip. And so now we've owned it. We're going on a year, and we could 1031 exchange it. We could do all sorts of stuff now, and we just didn't need to take this profit at that time. So we're delaying it for tax purposes. So now we just do it again, right? Over and over and over again. But that's a lot of work, Brady. So definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. The big thing here is we have to choose to either be great at acquisitions or great at operations. One of us, every single person here has to be good at one of these over time. chose to get really good at operations, and I had other people, meaning like wholesalers, agents, they can get good at acquisitions, and I'll just buy the deal. If you're really good at acquisitions, finding juicy deals, you can make a juicy deal work even if you're not very good at operations, right? So like there's that whole thing, you make your money when you buy the deal. Yeah, that's true. Big time. And so, but you get paid once you finish the deal though, right? Just remember that. So it goes hand in hand, but everybody here needs to be good at one of these, right? If you're not going to do the acquisition stuff, then you need to be good at the operation stuff. That's my opinion. All right. Work on the business. You can't work on the business, but in the business. And my big message to everybody these days is think long-term, right? And right now the real estate market's been a little rough depending on where you're at. But if we're thinking long-term, there is nobody in the world that has ever said, I wish I sold all my real estate 20 years ago. Nobody ever said that. So the message is keep real estate as much as possible. I opportunistically flip still to this day. And that's just to get active income to be able to put into passive assets, right? That's what we do. And so, but thinking long-term, because right now the market is disrupted. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of concerns, but that's when you should be really looking at the market, right? It's not about timing the market. It's figuring out, is it a good deal for you today? And if it is, great, hold on to it. I'm nervous about flips right now. And everybody here on the call should be a little nervous about flips, depending on which market you're in. Some markets, it's actually okay, right? It just depends where you're at. But there's a lot of markets in the US where it's kind of, I don't know, what's going to happen, right? So we don't know. So just know your market. It could be awesome where you're at, depending on the market. But when everybody else is scared, that is when you should be really focused on the market the most, right? If everybody's running away, ask me why. If everybody's running towards it, you should be like, oh, maybe I should be cautious, right? The whole Warren Buffett thing. And also back to me, it all goes back to this, which is Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read this in 2002 when I was 17 years old. Completely ruined my life because it made me like never want to work for anybody, like as an adult and stuff. So psychologically unemployable, all that great stuff. But the reason why I bring this book up is because a concept that he talks about quite a bit in the book, which is taking 4 green houses and turning them into 1 red hotel. So what is this concept, Brady?
It's Monopoly. Favorite game.
And a tax legal term for this is 1031 exchange, right? So it is much easier to gain more cash flow today if you have little green houses to roll into a red hotel. So long-term, buy real estate, keep it. Almost done. Make active income is what I focus on so that I can put it into passive assets, right? And that's where BRRRR does both. And yeah, so single, like Chris says there, single family to commercial. I have 4 commercial buildings that are all 1031 exchanges that came from single family homes, right? I love every one of them, right? They're great. I would have never bought any of them other than in a 1031 exchange, just because I can build the appreciation there. So that said, we're going to go into some Q&A, but I want everybody to say out loud, even if you're in the car by yourself, I'm a real estate investor now. Yeah, I'm an adult. And I'm going to pitch you guys on the REI Summit, which is, if you use Rent Ready, you get 15% off of the REI Summit 2026.com. It is April 1st. Ticket prices go up next week on the 27th. right? And because you guys are part of this webinar, we're giving 15. Everybody else gets 10% off. You guys get 15, and it's rent ready. So we got Brandon, David Green, my buddy Henry Washington. We got a bunch of other people. We got like 40 speakers. It is really more about today's market, right? What's going on. This isn't like hype stuff. A lot of the people we chose for the speakers this year are people that are going through it, like people that are in the market, in the trenches, actually doing it, good or bad. There's people that we have that are not doing good that are going to be on stage explaining why. And there's people that are
I
like
love
in the
that.
trenches. Yeah, there's people in the trenches right now getting after it. That's like, this is what I'm seeing. So it's also about networking as well. So that's the biggest thing that I think anybody should get out of this event is the networking component that happens with it. Like build relationships. When something's going right, it's another investor you can call and like brag to. If something's going wrong, it's another investor you should call to like complain to and be like, hey man, how do I get out of this? Like when I've been red tagged, I call other investors first. I'd be like, how did you deal with the Sadiq Tacoma's red tag? You know, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Relationships are everything. So it's for active investors, it's for new investors, it's for growing operators, capital raisers, multifamily investors, investors seeking community. Basically, everybody on here can get something out of it for sure. And these are some of the sessions. And this is pretty much my last slide. Multifamily, there's a big opportunity going into 2026. If you follow my friend Ken McElroy on his YouTube channel, he's all about right now as far as multifamily. It sucks if you bought multifamily in 2022. It's great if you want to buy multifamily in 2026, right? Because the market's gone down quite a bit in those, depending on which market you're in. We'll talk about how to source deals, how to create cash flow, right? There's a whole affordability crisis out there right now, but there's ways to invest into it, like co-living and so forth. And there's other aspects like ADUs. I'm big on that. Niche real estate investment strategies. We'll go over the State of Union, BRRRRs, scaling your real estate. It's a lot of content. There's 30 plus sessions at the event. And this is the last slide, Brady. So please come get your tickets before
Sweet.
prices go up. Prices
I
go up.
love that. Everybody, I put a link in the chat. Get your tickets. I'll be there. Our co-founder Ed, he's going to be there. We'll be hanging out. That's a good lineup. That's a really good speaker lineup.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. There's a lot more. We have like 40 plus people, so check it out on the website. The tickets do go up February 27th, so they are the cheapest they'll ever be right now, especially if you add the extra 15% off. So we have hotel room block. It's gonna be good times. So Q&A, man.
Yeah,
we got?
We've got some good questions, dude. We've got a lot of questions. Everybody, keep putting in your questions. We won't be able to tackle them all, but I see some recurring themes. I think the two biggest ones that have been popping up, man. I'll go. How are you building how are you finding contractors and property managers out of state?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's another whole webinar. But that said, well, one, know what your team needs to be. That's always the thing, right? So for me, when we choose a market that's out of state from where I'm at, then I got to map out who do I need. Now, there's a couple people I need right away, and everybody would agree with this. I need realtors for sure, right? I need to have somebody that is looking at properties for me, right? So I need realtors to look at the MLS, but more importantly, I need realtors to pull comps for me, and I need ones that I trust. So I need realtors. Before I need wholesalers, before I need contractors, before I need anybody, I need realtors. The second is contractors, right? I can't buy in an area if I don't have any contractors that'll go bid something out. So I need to go find them second. The third that I need is I need to find like independent people that'll drive properties for me. And that's usually wholesalers, that's other agents sometimes, that's other investors sometimes, right? And that'll be like an impartial third party person. That could be an inspector, right? That could be somebody that if I had to pay them, I could pay them, but they'll go drive the property and they're not like getting commission like the realtor is, and they're not the contractor that's trying to hide their work from me or something like that. I need a third party person. Most of the time, you guys would be surprised how many other investors and wholesalers in a local market that would be very, very happy to drive properties for you just because they like want to help out and they love driving properties and they'll do it for free, right? It's amazing. So I want to meet all those people, right? After that, then of course, property management, title and escrow is huge, which is an attorney closer or whatever. I need to know that, right? Insurances, blah, blah, blah. But realtors first, contractors second, and then independent driver third, and then wholesalers and da, 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 da. But when I meet realtors, I don't meet one. So we'll set up so if I'm like going to go into a new market, I'll be like, all right, a week before going out or 2 weeks before going out, we'll hit all the Facebook pages, we'll hit all the meetup, we'll hopefully maybe find a meetup that's going to happen while we're there. And we'll just start calling people that are there to find out like, hey, are you like, how do you work with investors? Like what's your strategy for real estate, when it comes to being a realtor, right? And maybe we'll get 4 or 5 of them that we like on the phone. And when we fly into town, or I fly into town, I want to have lunch, dinner, coffee, walk properties with those 4 or 5 people, right? If not more. So I don't just pick one. You got to jump around. The cream rises to the top too, right? Like, so the ones that there are really great realtors that don't have time for you, right? And then there's great realtors that would love to work with you. And then there's guys that want to be great realtors and they'll do whatever that you ask, right? So it just depends on who you meet. Contractors, So for me, here's the risk factor. I did this in Austin. So in December, I started buying in Austin and I bought a duplex, right? The duplex, great numbers, all that great stuff. I'm good to go on it. I have to buy something. Now, I don't want to buy a bad deal. I'm not saying that at all. I will never buy a bad deal, that I knowingly buy a bad deal, right? But this was a good duplex. It was a great duplex, happy with it, good margin, everything. I had 2 realtors look at it. I had an independent investor friend of mine look at it, right? So I'm like, all right, this is good, cool, safe. I'm using that duplex now to send contractors, to send people to do whatever. And I'm using it as a guinea pig property to get 10, 20, 30 people through it, to then get all the data for the construction, and also make sure people know we're serious because we buy, so that way they send us more deals. So like there's a whole thing there that I do when it comes, that was a very long way of answering your question, but it's really, I think the challenge what people do out of state is they find one realtor and they never talk to another one again. They find one contractor and they never talk to another one again, right? They find one wholesaler and never talk to another one again. Like my CRM is contractors, realtors, wholesalers. That's my CRM, right? Customer relations management software. So
your contractors, are you getting referrals from your realtors as opposed to like just Google and calling contractors?
Yeah, I would never just Google, but like maybe vendor. So here's an example. There's like a bunch of cabinet companies, right? So we have cabinet companies that have been mapping out and planning out the kitchens in these duplexes, right? And so we always ask them, well, like, well, hey, who's your favorite GC that you like working with, right? What I've learned is that like GCs won't refer you out to subs, but subs will refer their GCs all day, right? And so, so I might get an electrician out there, but and I'm be like, hey, who's your favorite GC? Like, oh, this guy, right? So it's multifaceted, right? As we go, but we put it in a spreadsheet, right? We have each GC for a tab, subs for a tab, realtor for a tab, wholesaler for a tab. It's just a tab on a spreadsheet. That's all it is. And then it's getting in the habit of just writing their name down, their phone number, and their email. That's it, and write a little note. It's really simple, but for some reason, it's very hard for people to do. So and keep track of it.
It's funny. My wife and I, we built our house a few years ago, and I tell you, we didn't sub out a lot, but like the best subcontractors we had were always referrals. They were always referrals from other good contractors. The horror stories were the ones that I was like, oh, I got to find them. It's got to be me. I'll find the perfect one. And I'm like, I'm only going with referrals in the future.
Yeah.
That's the only way to go.
Yeah. Referrals are great. Like there's a whole thing with vetting them and trust but verify, get good contracts. There's a whole thing with construction and getting pressured to pay. Like that's especially when you're newer to investing, you don't, there's some contractors that are very good at pressuring you to pay and you feel like you have to, you don't, right? There's a lot of things there. And there's times where you should actually pay, right? There's too many nuances, man. Like when it comes to this stuff, I like Kathy's question. Kathy, have you ever had to deal with squatters during the rehab phase? Yes. So for sure. Like, it's a good time. Most of the time they just leave, right? And whatnot. It's also good to have GCs that are a little rough around the edges sometimes. Because they'll get rid of guys for you without you ever having to even being notified, right? So that backfire sometimes, but
that's good.
It also depends on your state, so pay attention to that. But
what you can and can't do, it's a whole nother can of worms. I think the next question I've seen pop up a few times is, how are you calculating ARV and your ROI overall?
I'll calculate that. So pretty straightforward. So we do project cost, based on ROI. So if we buy a property, this is how hedge funds, any kind of fund looks at these deals most of the time, is they look at it as if it's purchased all cash. I don't buy cash. I buy with private lending or hard money or 30-year debt or whatever, DSCRs. I buy with all that. But but I analyze the deal based on cash. So I'll say, okay, if I buy the property for 100 grand cash and I put $50,000 cash into rehab construction and it's worth $200,000 when done, right? After selling cost, let's just say if I sold it cash, let's say that you net 35 grand or 30 grand, right? So that would mean the 35 grand net against the $150,000 cash would be a 20% cash on cash return, right? So that would mean the risk on the property is 20%. And so that's how I like. Then if I add holding costs, let's say that like hard money fees, whatever, points, whatever, then I look at what the cash return on is if I want to do it or not. So basically, my risk factor is at 20% based on buying it cash, rehabbing it cash. So that's the risk factor. That's why I'm looking at that ROI, that cash on cash return, 20%. But once I add my holding costs, such as I borrow 90% on a hard money holding costs, then what is my profit on that? So I won't do a deal for less than 30K profit. So if the profit goes down below 30, then I'm not buying it. Even if the ROI is 22% or something like that. Like it's just not, now it's not worth my time kind of a thing. So I do it a little differently. I measure the risk based on a cash margin, even though I'm not buying it cash. And then I measure the profitability and if it's worth doing after adding whole costs. So that's how I do it. But
Okay, that's fantastic. A couple guys asking about lending. JD, thanks for having great questions and making this really engaging.
yeah, geez, great.
Are you doing any hard money refinancing with the same lender generally, and do you have a preferred lender?
Yeah, so good question. Believe it or not, I have a hard money lending company. So it's called Fixated Funding, fixatedfunding.com. So we do hard money and DSCR loans and all the above. So I do a combination of things. I have a lot of private money lenders. So if any of you guys are out there that are private lenders that want to lend in a first or second position on a deed secured by a deed of trust or note, you can go to my website. There's a little link on the top that says Invest with Tarl. I'll talk to you. I handle all that myself, but I use private lenders a lot. I used to use hard money a lot, but but traditionally I'm borrowing from private individuals on the purchase and rehab side. And then when I'm done, I stabilize it with the 30-year DSCR or similar, right, project. And there's a lot of variances there, but like as far as like what product I use, whatever, but it's always going to be some sort of 30-year fixed debt at the back end. If I can't have it fixed, I'm not going to do it. So I don't do variables or anything like that. The only time it's a variable is with commercial, because it's almost impossible to find a 30-year like fixed commercial debt, right? But I also don't do a lot of those. I have 4, right? So, but yeah, so that's how I do it. So private lender on the front end, and then I do a traditional bank, credit union, nationwide lender, whatever, DSCR lender, fixated funding does DSCR loans, and blah, blah, blah. Then I'll look at that on the back end. And I've done that quite a few times. So
what's the piggyback question? What's the interest rate typically?
I pay private lenders 2 points, 10%. And that's secured on a note and deed of trust on the property. And I personally guarantee them, every one of them.
Nice. Okay, here's a good question that came in from someone on the forum ahead of time. Any advice for self-managing landlords who want to cut maintenance costs? I don't know if this is how it's intended, but I would interpret that as like, are you putting different finish and different materials in your rentals versus a flip? I'd imagine like just putting more durable goods to cut down on maintenance time.
No, you'd be surprised. I use a lot of the same stuff, but part of what I think has been, how do I say it? Like, I don't do the traditional landlord route of looking for like a rent ready finish type of thing. My thing is I'm not looking at, so this is where it's a little different. I buy these for cash flow, yes, but I don't need the cash flow, if that makes sense. Like they all have to cash flow. So here's how it works. I don't buy rentals that have a negative cash flow. I don't do that, right? And I don't keep BRRRs that have negative cash flow. I don't do that, right? But I don't need the cash flow also, right? At the same time. So so because of that, I'm not trying to maximize, I'm not trying to get $100 cash flow to $150 of cash flow per month. I'm not trying to do that. And the reason why I say that is that I would rather put the money into fixing the roof today. Let's say it's got 5 years left on the roof, right? On a house.
Yeah.
Well, I'm fixing it now, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to have to fix it later. So
yeah.
The rentals I keep, I fix everything before I put a tenant in it. So my CapEx is like 0, right? So when I'm calculating my holds, I have almost nothing in my CapEx calculation, my capital expenditure calculation, when you're doing like an NOI and all that kind of stuff. Because I fixed everything, right? I just don't want to deal with it once a tenant's in it. My whole mentality on my rentals is I never want to think about them again. That's pretty much how I see it. If that means I have to put an extra 5 or 10 grand into the rental up front today so that I don't have to think about it for the next 5 to 10 years, then I'm good with that, right? Like I'm going to do that all day.
Yeah.
So because of that, when it comes to maintenance costs, when we're renting these things out, I'm renting projects that are already fully rehabbed, right? And also in addition to that, I use a lot of the same finishes over and over again. So the faucets are the same faucets across all of them if they're in the same city. The kitchen faucet, the sinks, everything's the cabinetry. We try to keep everything the same. There might be some different variations, maybe on like exterior paint color and maybe tile slightly different, right? But for the most part, it's pretty much all the same pulls on the cabinets, same everything. So, and because we also save finish packets, because we make finish packets for each one, if a property, this happens today, right? We have rent like that property I showed in the beginning in Lakewood, we've owned for 10 years. We still have the finish packet from that property 10 years ago, right? So
Yeah.
and we've had it, we have tenant turns, right? We have people that have lived there for a long time, right? At times, but tenants turns, we're like, what was the paint code for that property? We could just go to the Dropbox because we keep everything in Dropbox. We can go to I can probably pull it up if you really want to. Like I can go to the Dropbox and I can say, okay, the paint code for that house 10 years ago when we painted it originally is this, right? And so now we don't
Yeah.
have to paint the whole house. We can get the paint. So those are little systems of just saving. And nowadays with Google Drive and Dropbox, there should be no reason why we're not saving this stuff, right? So it's there, right?
Yeah.
And that keeps costs down, but it also keeps repetitiveness, right? So it's the same thing as we go.
Yeah.
And also, what I'm more worried about is having to like stop my day to have to think about this later. That's really what I'm
Right.
trying not to do. I want to
Eliminate the
be
number of decisions, less mental
correct, right?
gymnastics.
Yeah, like it's like when there was a period of time where I was in commission only sales and I ran teams for financial services and stuff. I was a series. Anyways, I did investment brokerage for a little bit, but a long time
Yeah.
ago, and we had this whole thing about it's called the paperclip thing, right? If I was the manager, I had like 70 agents, like at one point. But if I had my door open, and every single agent that worked for me came in and all they wanted was a paperclip, that was it. Hey, I just need a paperclip. Hey, I just need a paperclip. I would never get anything done, right? Because it'd be those interruptions constantly, right? And that's I don't even want that with my rentals, right? I don't.
Yeah.
I want if there's something broken, I want to be able to text a Dropbox file to whoever's in charge of property management and say the finishes are in here, and then they could figure it
Yeah.
out from there, right? So,
Absolutely.
um,
Simplified it.
but really, the big message there for the maintenance cost is that if I suspect the thing to be that is towards the end of its life or will be at some point, I'm not going to try to eke it another year or two. I'm going to replace it now, right?
Yeah.
And like that duplex that I mentioned, that's in Austin that I bought 45 days ago or whatever. There's an HVAC on it. There's one of the outdoor units, is probably 10 years old. It looks a little rough, but it works. I'm replacing it. So I'm
Yeah.
like, there's nobody here. I don't want to call a year from now when it gets used because the property's been empty for a little while. Like, replace it now. And it's going to help also with my refinance, right? So that's the other side. Here's the thing with the BRRRRs is that if I fix everything now, right, and I make it look really good now, when I get my appraisal, it's going to raise the value and allow me to leave less money in the deal if I want to. And so it's a little different. I'm not trying to maximize every dollar. I'm trying to make it so I don't have to think about it. So
Interesting. Yeah.
that's my different strategy. But
Yeah. I love that, man.
yeah,
There's a few more questions. I don't know how
yeah,
much time do you have, man? Go for a few minutes.
I'm used to. I don't think anybody's been on my webinars. My webinars last a long
Yeah.
time because I just talk. So I'm fine with this. I like this stuff. So keep going.
That's good, man. Cool. There's a lot of nuggets.
As long
Couple
as
questions on
everybody here
DS.
buys the ticket to REI Summit, I'm going to stay on longer. So
We'll go. Everybody buys a ticket. We'll go for 5 more hours. Let's see. Somebody asked which makes more sense for investors, DSCR versus conventional loans, and then
good question.
Hubert. I thought there were 1 or 2 more. Hubert saying
Well,
what's best DSCR rate without prepaid penalty for rentals nowadays?
that's going to be in the sixes. Like so, for depending on it's all your DSCR rate, debt service coverage ratio. Here's a big difference between conventional and DSCR. Conventional underwrites you, and DSCR underwrites the property with a little bit of you. So every loan looks at your credit score for DSCR and conventional and stuff. anyways, and that's going to dictate your rate. For sure, probably the heaviest thing that dictates your rate is two factors. First is leverage. So how high of a LTV are you going? And then the second is your credit score. So those are the two biggest things that dictate your rate that you're going to get. The biggest factor is your credit score for sure. If you have over 740, you're pretty much good to go with every DSCR lender with their best rate to begin with. And then there's little nuances, like if you get rid of prepayment penalty, then it's going to raise your rate. If you have a 5-year prepayment penalty to lower your rate, like conventional loans are awesome if you qualify for them, but they're looking at your debt to income ratio, your debt, your ability to pay, not so much the property. A DSCR loan is looking at the rents on the property compared towards the mortgage payment. So they don't take your income into account. A conventional takes your income into account. So there's a point, and you can also have so many conventionals. DSCR, you can have a limit, unlimited of them. There's also a lot of DSCR loans that don't show up on your credit report. Most don't show up on your credit report because they're business purpose loans. It's a little bit different. There are some that do, right? But pretty much the majority, actually not pretty, every single DSCR loan I have is not on my credit report, but conventional shows up on my credit report. So it really depends. If you can qualify for conventional and get rentals, then heck yeah, go for it, right? Those because then it doesn't matter what it rents for. With a DSCR, it matters what it rents for, right? Big time. And that could affect a lot of things. Also, if it's conventional, you could do short-term, midterm, and stuff like that. DSCR lenders don't really like that, so you got to watch that too. So there's all sorts of factors you got to look at. So, anyways,
that's good. JD had another question. You mentioned ADUs a while back. If I have here it is. If I have a current mortgage on a property and I want to add an ADU, any suggestions for how to build and finance a rental property in the back without a full refinance?
ooh, that's tough. So that's a lot of other questions involved in that one, but essentially, yeah, that's a tough one. If there's a way to pull out a second, great. Construction loan, great. Like those are all factors. But if you're already like so I'll give everybody an example. So if you have a property that is worth 300 grand today and you owe 250 on it already, right? And it's a rental of some sort, then you're already at 75% or whatever it is, 80% LTV. You can't pull that 50. Like there's no lender that's going to let you do that because they want you to be, most lenders are going to make you be less than 80% loan to value, right? Of the value of the property. So you can't pull that 50K out to do the rehab. Like that's what JD is talking about, right? So, but if you add an ADU, the property might be worth 500, right? When it's done. So that's the future value of the property. So that's where sometimes construction loans might actually help. And that would be like I don't even know if 2 or 3Ks are still around or not, but always check with your local credit unions first because they usually have the most creative local type deals like this for construction purposes and everything like that. Investment-based loans, there's always somebody that will do it. It's just how much do you want to pay, right? Is what it boils down to. There's always somebody that'll give you the money, but are you paying 4 points and 16% for it, right? So for 5 months or what? So there's always somebody. But traditionally speaking, yeah, you would have to refi the whole thing and structure it. There are ways to, I would not recommend this, but a lot of cities allow you to condoize things, but traditionally you have to have the building already built before you could condoize it. So, and then you can get a separate APN and then you can refinance there too. So that's another factor. You can raise private capital, private money. But a traditional bank it's a little bit tougher to do that for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Appreciate you taking the one that has 10 other questions beneath it. I think that was good. Oh shoot, there was a really good one. I'm trying to find it. Y'all have put through so many questions. This is great.
It was great.
I just remembered. Are you using any websites to find properties, or just pretty much all through referrals and wholesalers?
Yeah, the MLS. So that's the website. But no, I don't. If a wholesaler is I have no problem paying a wholesaler a wholesale fee, right? If the deal works out for me, right? It's just what it is. I'll say this with wholesalers, like if you line up 100 people that say they're wholesalers, maybe 5 of them are actually like,
I was gonna say 4.
yeah. But that's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. It's not that the other 95 are like bad. They're new, right? They're just new at what they're doing. Like it's just what it is, right? And so, which I was new, that's how I started. And I got all sorts of stories about my insanity trying to figure that out when I was younger. But but the reality is like my whole thing is that a blind squirrel finds a nut, right?
Yeah.
So when that newer wholesaler finds an actual deal, I want them to send it to me. And
Yeah.
so that requires being nice to everybody. That requires helping everybody. That requires like, yeah, go ahead, draw my properties. That's fine. Like that requires like talking to them at the meetups, right? That it requires responding to their bad deals and telling them why it's not so good, right? So, and I think too many people get frustrated by that too fast, right? And just
Yeah.
know that most newer investors start out as wholesalers, right? And just have empathy.
Right.
That's how I see it. So
Yeah.
I was in their shoes at one point, but
For sure.
anyways.
I would think,
Sorry,
my,
Dean,
yeah, go ahead.
fixatedcapital.com is not, you don't promote that anymore. It's fixatedfunding.com. So Fixated Funding is our lending company. On there, Fixated Capital is an investment business that I use. We were looking at raising capital at one point. We shut the website down because we don't really care about that anyways. But then tarlyarber.com, if you guys are interested in all my free stuff, it's on tarlyarber.com. And then fixatedfunding.com is our hard money lending company. So, and not Fixated Capital.
Okay,
Should
perfect.
change the name.
JD was asking if you could reshare the, if you go back to that Dropbox slide
Mm-hmm. Oh, I could
where it
probably
had the
just show
hierarchy
you.
of the different folders you have.
Yeah, give me a second.
Sure. And
Just
I would say
pulling.
one note on wholesalers. I My past job, I used to work with mostly wholesalers and flippers, and like I think there's a little bit of disconnect between like landlords looking for off-market properties and wholesalers. Like a lot of these wholesalers are trying to get rid of properties. Um, I would say like man, if you just go into like any city and Google like sell my house fast for cash, Austin, Texas, sell my house in foreclosure, Seattle, Washington. The first few websites are going to be usually reputable wholesalers. Just reach out to them directly, ask them if they have any properties to sell. You know,
Yeah,
maybe if you
so
can't
here we
make it
go.
to a meetup.
I agree with everything that you just said. So these are five folders that we put into everything, right? So this is actual Dropbox template that we just like copy and paste whenever we start one. So this is actually in my Dropbox. So property template folder, create a copy. Analysis, before picks, purchase, rehab picks. The rehab
Nice.
analysis is where we put anything that has to do with the analysis of the property, the profit and loss spreadsheet, if we have a real estate report, property report, survey, whatever got sent to us, comps, right? We just shove in the folder. It's getting in the habit of just like anything that gets sent to you, just shove it in the folder, right? So you don't have to look for it later. You shouldn't have to go look through your emails, right? Or your text messages. That's how I see it. You should be able to open up a Dropbox and everything should be there. Before pictures are what it is. What's the before photos? Purchase, that's any of the purchase docs like MLS, mutual contracts, title, that kind of stuff. Rehab has other folders, bids, invoices, permits, plans, right? So those are the same folders all the time too. And then rehab pics are what they are. It's just you just throw pictures of all the rehab in here, but we put the subfolders of like with the date, name, that kind of thing. So in there. And then when we go to sell it, we either put listing as a new folder or we go to refinance, we put refinance as a new folder. So that's the only thing that changes at the end of the project. But that is my actual Dropbox template. So
Awesome.
nothing fancy. It's just
Yeah.
the fancy part is getting in the habit of saving stuff in there, right? And following it. And that's it.
Yeah. That's great. I'm reading
There
the
you go.
chat here.
203B, right? I like that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I haven't done one
That's
before.
good.
So that's good. That's a good answer. Thanks, Xio.
Sweet. I've seen a couple people asking for a webinar on 1031 exchanges. I think that'll be one we'll plan out eventually. And
That's
anytime
a
that
good
pops
one.
up, so many questions.
There's some really
1031,
smart people
DSU
out
loans.
there.
Yeah.
I will say this, guys, just so you know, as a caveat for 1031 exchanges, just because they're a 1031 exchange custodian and they're able to do 1031 exchange doesn't mean that they're good. So there's no they don't even have a fiduciary. Like you have to be careful who you use. There's some extremely good reputable ones out there. Just remember that. So ask around. Don't try to do it yourself. Like get a good reputable 1031 exchange company to help you out with it. But your CPA is actually who's responsible to make sure that you did your 1031 correctly. The 1031 exchange custodians that help out there, they're not actually like legally obligated to make sure you did it right. So your CPA is the one that handles your taxes, not them. So just always remember that. Anyways,
That's awesome, man.
yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Well, we've had some really good questions. I think I'm going to wrap it up. Is there any, maybe one last question or any final words you want to share, Tarl?
Let's go.
Sweet. All right. Let's see. Let me look at the chat here.
If you guys want to hang out, come to the REI Summit. I'm
Yeah.
not just the person that runs it. I'm around there all day hanging out. Some of you guys have probably met me or whatever, but if you've been to these events, um, but it'll be a good time. Go to reisummit2026.com. Use the rent ready discount code. February 27th, prices go up. So buy your ticket. Check it out. Check out the
Nice.
website. Good stuff.
Yeah. Check it out.
The entire agenda's up. Everything. It's great. What's the
Yeah.
last question?
Everybody's. Oh, last question was JD said, oh, I just said it. Are you still taking on vendors for the summit? Can I get a free ticket if I bring you a vendor?
Yeah, just hit up sponsors at fixatedevents.com. There's a lady, Danielle. She's one of our key people on our team. She will be like shark to blood in the water type person if you know somebody that wants to be a vendor. But if you tell her,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
it's fine. You get somebody to pay for it. I don't care, whatever. So
Yeah.
that's all good.
Oh, that's cool.
But
Sweet.
good
Well,
stuff.
everybody, say a big, give Tarl a big thank you in the chat for him giving us time here and sharing with us today. A couple quick housekeeping items. One, I would love to know what you guys want to see on these webinars. I always ask you for feedback. Let me know what kind of topics are valuable. Like I said, 1031 exchange keeps popping up. The next webinar, actually, 2 weeks from now, is going to be with our friends at Showami. And so it's funny, Tarl, you're talking about like, using people out of state. And so we're going to be talking about how Showami can help you, manage out of state, whether it's having agents go through to take photos, do walkthroughs, all the different sorts of tasks agents can help you with Showami. So make sure to come back in a couple weeks for that. Keep an eye on your email. And then lastly, if you are a landlord and you are not familiar with Rent Ready yet, we would love to help you out. Okay. Rent Ready, we're property management software or helps you self-manage all your rentals, collect rent, screen tenants, list units, handle maintenance accounting, all the things that Charles talking about. Simple, cost-effective enough. If you have one unit, that's fine. We'd love to have you. It's $12 a month for unlimited properties, flat fee or flat price, and then it's scalable enough to grow with you to hundreds of properties. Real quick, two new things that I'm really excited about. We've got a full accounting suite within Rent Ready now. So integrates with your bank. You can snap photos of receipts, have the AI take the info out of the receipts, give you your scheduling and P&L. So anyways, lots of new things in the works over here at Rent Ready. If you want to ask us questions, come hang out, chit chat with us, learn more, rentready.com/call us. One of our product specialists would be more than happy to chat with you. But I think that is it. Yeah, everybody give a big thank you to Tarl in the chat. And thank you so much for hopping on, man.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening to me for so long. And then hope it was helpful in some way, and hope to see you guys in person one day at one of our events.
Yeah, that was great, man. And there will be a replay emailed out. Everybody today or tomorrow, we'll get the replay to you. But yeah, thank you, Tarl. Thanks for everyone hopping on. We'll see you guys in a
Thanks,
couple
everybody.
weeks.
Thanks, Brady.
All right.
Bye.